You're lucky if you never hear it in your life. This sound is a series of blaring noises that intend to grab your attention and make sure you are listening. It's so critical in possible life and death situations, we are not legally allowed to play the sound for you in this video. Which begs the question, who came up with the emergency alert system and how did this become the sound that signifies a national emergency? The emergency alert system is that awful chill-inducing screech you would hear before a national emergency. State and local agencies can also use it to deliver important weather information, like tornado alerts. Most Americans have only heard it when it's being tested during a natural disaster or an Amber Alert, and not an actual national emergency, thankfully. The EAS as we know it was created in 1997 as a way for the President and FEMA to speak to the entire country through every medium within 10 minutes of a national emergency. But it wasn't the first rendition. In 1951, the Control of Electromagnetic Radiation System was created to alert Americans over the radio in the event of a Soviet nuclear explosion. But 10 years later, the development of Soviet missiles rendered this system obsolete. That's because missiles are guided by radio waves, which means the alert system would be decimated before it could even send a warning. That's why we now have the EAS, which can send alerts via terrestrial broadcasters, cable providers, satellite services, and digital radio. Once again, we cannot play you the actual sounds of the alert because the FCC prohibits all actual or simulated usage of the tones to protect the integrity of the system. But we will let this guy from FEMA recreate it with his voice.
Kind of sounds like brap, brap, brap.
That's Al Kenyon. He works with FEMA to make sure the EAS is being used correctly.
Just to avoid confusing the public, it's important to keep the use of the EAS alert tone unique to alerts because that's the sound that we're educating the public to respond to. You know that when you hear that sound, something important that may affect your life or property is going to follow.
That's why the FCC has handed out multiple fines to media companies using the tone. In 2013, the film Olympus Has Fallen used tones from the EAS in a trailer, and cable providers airing it were fined $1.9 million. Other violators include a promo for Conan, a commercial for the NFL's Jacksonville Jaguars, and an episode of The Walking Dead. So back to that sound, which we can't play you. The alert is made up of 4 parts. The first is 3 pure tones. Then,
the attention signal. It's comprised of 2 pure tones that were carefully selected because they're anharmonic tones. They don't have a place in music of any culture that anyone was aware of when they're doing their research. It's kind of obnoxious sounding.
He said it, not us. After those tones, there's a data header, and those sounds have a meaning.
That's a slow speed data that conveys information about who the sender is, what the event is, what areas are affected, and how long the alert lasts. That sound is then followed by an announcer or computerized voice delivering a cathartic, "This is not a test," before letting you know what's going on. Why is that sound so good at scaring the out of us? Neuroscientist Luke Arnold has spent his career studying our brain's response to sounds and thinks he knows why.
We found that it's comparable to the adult scream or baby screams. The EAS sound is also comparable to the death whistle.
Let me play that last one for you in case you haven't heard it before. Some experts theorize that Aztecs used it to send spirits off into the afterlife. Others think they used it to scare opponents. Anyway, not the most calming sound ever.
So we mapped the EAS sounds using our method to measure the roughness and predict how aversive it is. So it's on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 would be tolerable and 5 would be unbearable. And so 4.3 is pretty... sounds pretty bad.
AKA very intolerable. So was that intentional?
Oh, definitely. The sounds were chosen to be in the middle of the hearing range, and it is very similar in range to that produced by an infant.
So it proves we're not crazy. The sound is empirically annoying.
I guess this sound triggers aversive responses in the listener's brain.
So it's clear it sends our brain into a state of, oh crap, everything is falling apart. But is that the most effective thing to do in the event of a national emergency?
If the goal is just to grab attention, I think it does the right job. If the goal is to improve behavior by accelerating behavior, then I'm not so sure it's the best sound.
Arnold argues loud sounds like these get people's attentions, but might freeze them up instead of springing them into action. FEMA, for its part, says it has no issues with the sound or plans to change it. But what if you're hard of hearing or don't speak English, or your radio and TV are off?
With cell phones, there's a specific cadence for when an alert comes across a cell phone. It vibrates in a specific pattern.
The FCC and FEMA have been trying to upgrade the EAS by harnessing the power of smartphones. For example, allowing emergency text messages to include photos, videos, maps, or foreign language support. But there's one big caveat to all this. You only get these messages if your cell phone company participates in the wireless emergency alert system. Participation is not mandatory, but most have opted in, allowing for 99% of cell phones to be reached by this system. And you can see if your phone is one of them by looking for this sticker on the packaging.
FEMA wants to do everything we can to ensure the safety and survivability and quick recovery of people who are subject to disasters and emergencies. Alerting and having a proper public response where the public does those things that are helpful to mitigate their own personal risk is very important.
So it looks like that baby scream-like tone isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But if it does, what do you think the emergency alert system of the future should sound like? Nickelback's full album followed by Morgan Freeman's soothing voice, maybe? Let us know in the comments.